So it's going to be welcome to the channel, this tactical intellectual channel. Today we have a pretty good video presentation. In my opinion, I would say it's better than part one, because it's progression. So it's going to be in regards to the original population of Elam and Syria. So of course we're definitely going to use source materials, and I'm going to do a little bit of skimming and give my commentary, and may or may not have video evidence to support everything that we read. But hey, if I don't, just know that I will reason and make logical inferences. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the content. Starting off with a video, it's pretty interesting. It's about the rise and fall of Elam, but here's some things that could make your blood curdle. Just notice the imagery here, and I mean, this video was done by a Stancadian person, so this is the best that you're gonna get from them, because at worst they're gonna be like, yo, this is our stuff, and they're just gonna show 100% them from an image standpoint. You know, them being fair is saying, okay, we're gonna give you 50% of screen time, quote unquote. You know, we're gonna show you a little bit here, but you know, we're mostly gonna show us, or what's the modern presentation. Is very anachronistic, meaning that, I mean, the time periods are, you know, skewed. I say anachronistic because they're taking the modern day population and they're weaving it into the, or presenting it as the ancient populations. You're gonna notice that, but all in all, I'll say from an informational standpoint, they do get the information correct. But well, that bold claim that about ethnicity and what it is racially, you know, don't take my word for it. Check this video out here.
In the cradle of ancient civilizations, nestled between the sprawling plains of Mesopotamia and the ancient lands of Persia, lay Elam, a region veiled in mystery and antiquity. Elam was not merely a geographic entity, it was a testament to the resilience and diversity of the people who called it home. The very name, Elam, whispered across millennia, finds its roots in the Akkadian and Sumerian tongues, translating to highlands or the high country. The Elamites themselves, inhabitants of this enigmatic land, referred to it as Holtami or Holtamti, embodying the same essence of elevation and grandeur. While biblical narratives romantically link Elam to Elam, son of Shem, son of Noah, historical records lend no credence to this claim, shrouding Elam's origins in mystery. The tale of Elam unfurls through the ages, spanning from approximately 3200 BCE to the monumental year 539 BCE. This ancient civilization, rooted in the provinces of modern-day Elam and Khuzestan in southern Iran, as well as parts of southern Iraq, flourished for centuries, leaving an indelible mark on the annals of history. In the labyrinthine corridors of Elamite civilization, scholars discern distinct epochs, each casting a unique hue upon this enigmatic tapestry. Proto-Elamite period. This era, obscured by the veils of an undeciphered linear script, remains a realm of mystery. The Proto-Elamite script, worn around 3200 BCE, enshrouds the period, its secrets still eluding our understanding. Artifacts discovered primarily in Susa, the city oscillating between Mesopotamian and Elamite dominion since its foundation in 4000 BCE, provide tantalizing hints of a sophisticated society, skilled in the arts of ceramics and craftsmanship. Old Elamite period. With the dawn of the cuneiform script, a monumental shift occurred in Elamite history. The Sumerians, ancient scribes of Mesopotamia, etched the first war in recorded history, a battle where the Sumerian king enemy Brigisi of Kish vanquished the Elamites, marking Elam's debut in historical texts. While details of this period remain scant, the emergence of the cuneiform script heralded a new chapter in Elam's saga. Middle Elamite period. During this epoch, the mosaic of Elamite culture began to take form. The Federation of Elamites, disparate yet unified under the banners of cities like Awan, Anshan, Shimashki, and Susa, painted a vibrant portrait of diversity. Trade winds carried whispers of Elamite civilization as far as India, making this era a testament to their economic prowess and cultural richness. Elam reached its zenith. culminating in the establishment of the Elamite Empire. Neo-Elamite period. As the pages of time turned, the Elamites continued their indomitable march, influencing ancient Persian religion and culture. The echoes of their beliefs resonated through the corridors of history. Figures like Untash Napier-Aisha, who erected the majestic ziggurat and temple complex of Dur-Untash, and Shutruk Nakant, founder of the short-lived Elamite Empire, emerged as luminaries in this period. Yet, the saga of Elam was not one of seamless unity but a patchwork quilt of diverse peoples bound by the common thread of their homeland. It was a federation of souls, not an ethnic monolith, flourishing under the guardianship of cities that etched their names in the sands of time. In the historical chronicles, the Neo-Assyrian king Ashurbanipal claimed to have razed Elamite cities in 647 to 646 BCE. However, archaeological revelations whispered a different truth. Elamite cities endured, a testament to their resilience against the tides of conquest. As the Persian Achaemenid Empire dawned, Elam was absorbed into its sprawling dominion. Yet, the legacy of Elam endured, leaving an indelible mark on Persian culture and language. The vibrant tapestry of Elam, woven with threads of mystery, resilience, and diversity, continues to captivate the imagination, reminding the world of an ancient land where civilizations thrived and dreams took flight.
I must admit that that video was pretty interesting. I mean, with the Stankagian presentation, you will get a little bit of truth, maybe a little bit, but mostly they're going to cater to their image. They're going to present their image to the forefront, and basically you kind of get the overall impression that that 80% skewed imagery, you really feel that, hey, that was basically the start, the origin. And then, I mean, that leaves way for that slave narrative to come in later generations that have their own biases. They can install that slave narrative in there to explain away things. So that's my only grievance with that. It's the imagery. But we're gonna go ahead and hit the books and see what it says. We're again looking at the book Sex and Race Volume 1 by J.A. Rogers. We're gonna check out Chapter 4, Syria, Palestine, Arabia, Persia. We are in the Kindle version, so we're gonna be checking out page 58, and the highlighted portion reads: "The ruins of a splendid Negrito civilization have also been unearthed by Dulafwa in Persia at Susa, the Shushan of the Bible, where Ahasuerus, king of Persia and Ethiopia, chose the beautiful Jewess Esther as his wife." Speaking of the mixture that went on in this area between Elamite black and Aryan white, Dulafwa says the Greeks themselves seem to have known these two Susian races, the Negroes of the plains and the Scythian whites of the mountains. Have not their old poets given to the direct descendants of the Susian Memnon, the legendary hero who perished under the walls of Troy, a Negro father, Tithon, and a white mountain woman as mother, Kisia? On to the next page, and it reads, continuing, he says, "I shall attempt to show to what distant antiquity belongs the establishment of the Negritos upon the left bank of the Tigris, and the elements constituting the Susian monarchy. Towards 2300 BC, the plains of the Tigris and Anzan Susinka were ruled by a dynasty of Negro kings. The coming of this dynasty of Medes corresponded perhaps to the arrival in the south of an immense Scythian invasion. Pushed back by the black Susians after having taken possession of the mountains, the whites poured into the plains of the Tigris and remained master of the country until the time when Kudar Nakunta subdued Chaldea and founded Anzan Susinka, and who added to the territory of the blacks Nime Kusi, Habardip, all the mountainous districts once inhabited by the whites of the Scythian race. Herodotus, who visited this region in the 5th century BC, mentions the dark skins of the peoples. He calls them Ethiopians, but says their hair was straighter than those of the Western Ethiopians who, he says, had woolly hair. The Elamites, however, seem rather to have belonged to the more Negroid stock of the West, as their hair, as seen on the monuments, is short and woolly. The Elamites, says Sir Harry Johnston, appears to have been a Negroid people with kinky hair and to have transmitted this racial type to the Jews and Syrians. There is a curliness of the hair, together with a Negro eye and full lips in the portraiture of Assyria, which conveys the idea of an evident Negro element in Babylonia. Quite probably the very ancient Negro invasion of Mediterranean Europe came from Syria and Asia Minor on its way to Central and Western Europe. Elam or Susa once dominated Babylon and Assyria. The inscriptions of Assur Banipal revealed that Kador Nakunta, the Negro king, invaded Chaldea and carried off to his palace at Susa the booty or treasure captured there, including the famous golden statue of the goddess Nana. Babylon, says F. Gillett, was subjected to the neighboring kingdom of Elam and Susiana. According to Houssaye, the Susian Negritos were in contact with the Mediterranean peoples from the most distant antiquity. Professor Paul Pelliot also finds that Negroid scripts of Easter Island in the South Seas have been shown to be similar to those in southern India and Elam, where flourished more than 3,000 years ago a great Negro civilization. In short, the influence of this splendid Negro culture extended far to the east and to the west. Elamite and invading Assyrian later united to form the Persian people of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. For thousands of years before even Cyrus, however, Ethiopians and Egyptians had been penetrating into all this region as conquerors and traders, and bringing still more Negro, mulatto, and white strain into the mixture already there. To get an idea of the mixed nature of all that ancient Eastern population, we must divest ourselves entirely of the current notions of race. The Chaldeans, for instance, the land from which Abraham, ancestor of the Jews, came, were Negroes, according to Godfrey Higgins and others. As for the Phoenicians, they also were a very much mixed people and might have been a composite of Elamite, Aryan, Ethiopian, and Egyptian. Some of the Phoenician rulers, as Tabnit and his illustrious son Eshmunuzar II, were pure Negroes. Eshmunuzar is described as being Egyptian with large, full, almond-shaped eyes, the nose flattened, and the lips remarkably thick after the Negro mold. Drop down a little bit. The eldest son of Canaan was Sidon, the ancestor of the Phoenicians, and the founder of the great cities of Sidon and Tyre. Well, we definitely see that all these different racial mixtures, well, the original melanated population and then that Scythian element came in, and that really produced a third element, more of a, I guess, biracial type, but you still had various shades of brown. I mean, that just added to the, I guess, gene pool of melanated people right there. So let's go ahead and further reinforce that idea of race mixing between these groups within the area. The book Sex and Race Volume 1 by J.A. Rogers, the chapter 3, entitled The Mixing of White and Black in the Ancient East. Highlighted portion reads, the great areas of race mixing in the ancient world were both shores of the Mediterranean, Asia Minor, and Arabia, all the territory bordering on the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. Stop right there. All right, so the next page reads, in the 7th century BC, Asia made its first successful invasion of Egypt this being is conquest by Esarhaddon, king of Assyria. But Egyptian rulers as Pepi, Amenopis III, Thutmose III, and Tirhakwa had been carrying Egyptian power and Egyptian blood into Syria, Palestine, Phoenicia, and Assyria for nearly 2,000 years. With the Assyrian invasion of Esarhaddon, there came an infusion of Asiatic strain into the Egyptian population. We say Asiatic because it is impossible to say just how much white strain there was in it. It was in all probability largely a mulatto strain, as pale, fair, Aryan, and black Negro Elamite, as will be seen later, had been mixing in all this Asiatic area for thousands of years. After the Assyrians came the Medes and Persians, who were also a mulatto race. The nearest to what was a pure white infusion in the Egyptian population came in with the conquest of Alexander the Great in 335 BC and the later rule of Ptolemy, one of his generals. Ptolemy was a Greek and presumably white. In any case, the Greeks of that era, though highly mixed, seem to have been much nearer white than black. What actually stuck out to me is that in the 7th century, it says that Egypt was resupplying or restocking the levels of melanin to the Mesopotamian area because that Stankagian element was lightening things up. But it was the Egyptians who was restocking, quote unquote, the levels of melanin back to the normal levels that it was prior to this Stankagian element coming in. So it's time to bring in scholastic reinforcements to bolster my point. So this is the Encyclopedia Iranica, and of course the subject is Marcel Auguste Dulafoy, and he's a French archaeologist back in he was born in 1844, died 1920. So he had specialized in the times of antiquity, these civilizations that were around then. So in keeping up with the theme, let's go ahead and read this part, this slide here. It says, Dulafoy confided in his wife the task of publishing the details of the work in her book. Of course, you see, and it's talking about Susa. Unfortunately, however, she indulged her preference for anecdote at the expense of archaeological precision. Dulafoy himself undertook an elaborate synthesis entitled L'Acropole de Susa d'après l'Effort. Yeah, I don't speak French, so let me skip that. There he provided a good description of the geography and some historical information on the country of Elam, of which Susa had been the capital. But having discovered representations of both black and white men among the enameled brick archers, he was led to conclude that the indigenous population of Susiana had been black. He identified them as Negritos. Although Halsey's examination of the excavated skeletons did not actually confirm this daring hypothesis, Dulafoy went on to identify the black archers as the Susianan platoon of the Immortals, the royal guard mentioned by Herodotus, and the whites as Aryan immigrants, and thus the Persian contingent of the guard. Not to sound like a broken record, but I stress context constantly on this platform. Now, we have the mention of the Negrito element, and then that Aryan or Stankagian or Stankadian element, they came in later. They're not native, they're not original to that Mesopotamian area. They were what they say the Aryan guard. Those represent that non-melanated element that you see on these wall paintings or wall murals over there, or not over there, but in museums that used to be over there. I really don't feel I have to elaborate much I like to let the information do the speaking for myself and for other people, because everybody got that intellect, so things will take shape on their own time. So let's go ahead and go to another source, and you the viewers, you guys will put things together. You guys are smart, intelligent people. So let's go ahead and move on to the Negro in the New World and check some things out. All right, so we have to utilize the book The Negro in the New World by Sir Harry H. Johnston. Notice what this says about the Elamites and the Syrians on page 27. It says, the Elamites of Mesopotamia appear to have been a Negroid people with kinky hair, and to have transmitted this racial type to the Jews and Syrians. There is a curliness of the hair, together with a Negro eye and full lips, in the portraiture of Assyria, which conveys the idea of an evident Negro element in Babylonia. Quite probably, the very ancient Negro invasion of Mediterranean Europe came from Syria and Asia Minor on its way to Central and Western Europe. It's kind of funny, because when you speak on the neighbors of Syria, you kind of already by default kind of speak on Syria already, kind of it's like through osmosis. But anyway, I do have that feeling of why go in depth on Syria, because there's so much overlap. But you know what, I'm not gonna be cheap to you guys and chicken out like that, so I will give some information on the Syrians. Here's a Wikipedia article on Assyria. It says that, alright, the modern name Assyria is of Greek origin. Let's drop down. The Greeks called the Levant Syria and Mesopotamia Assyria, even though the local population, both at that time and well into the later Christian period, used both terms interchangeably to refer to the entire region. Alright, so we're going to be talking about Syria. Now, I know some people are like, why did you read that? That has nothing to do with anything. But I admit that was my attempt at a cheap segue. But let's go ahead and go into this article right here. Now, I know a lot of you guys may or may not be familiar with the biblical Abraham. But anyway, long story short, he had Sarai, but then Sarai, his wife, died, so he picked up and married Keturah. So he had 6 sons with Keturah. So the sons of Keturah, we're gonna go into that right there. That's why you see this name Shua right there. So let's call it a mini deep dive. The Wikipedia article is talking about the writings of Josephus, and let's paraphrase what he says here. It's saying that Josephus writes about Abraham's sons, that he contrived to settle them in colonies, and they took possessions of the troglodytes in the country of Arabia Felix, southwest Arabia, as far as it reaches to the Red Sea. But unlike his brothers, Shua seems to have turned northward and traveled into northern Mesopotamia, in what is now the northern region of modern-day Syria. As evidenced by cuneiform text, the land seems to have been named after him, being known as the land of Suchu, which lies to the south of ancient Hittite capital of Carchemish on the Euphrates River. Now, that was a pretty good, easy segue to Carchemish, and we have that Carchemish wiki article up, and you see it says Carchemish, spelled with a C, also spelled with a K. Carchemish was an important ancient capital in the northern parts of the region of Syria. At times during its history, the city was independent, but it was also part of the Mitanni, Hittite, and Neo-Assyrian empires. Today, it is on the frontier between Turkey and Syria. So Turkey used to be Anatolia, which was, I want to say, probably Hittite, Amorite. I know they had strong correspondence with the Akkadian peoples, but I can't think of it right now. My mind is focused on this, but that is a future video presentation dying to happen. Turkey, modern day Turkey, wasn't always Turkey. Those who know, they know. We all know that there's a lot of Stankasians, especially in the USA, who will depict modern day Turkey as the ancient peoples who seeded the civilization. I digress. I'm definitely going to do that later on, but let's go ahead and dwell more on Carchemish. So I'm just gonna speak. I have a map that's scanning or spanning slowly. I have two maps actually. That first map there is talking, well, you can see it's color coded. It has the names of these cities here, and you can tell by just how close they are that they were involved with a lot of trade. They kept records too, so there was a writing system also. And then there's a second map that we have here that has like the Black Sea, the Mediterranean Sea right there, and then you see Anatolia, Turkey, or Turkey, however they say it. Then you see Carchemish is in the northern part of Syria, right close to southern Turkey, or southern Anatolia rather. And that's a good trade spot. I mean, you're close to Cyprus, you're right on the border of Anatolia. Syria is right there, the Persian Empire. I mean, hey, it's all right there in front of you. Hey, here's an idea that drives the racist crazy. You don't think these melanated people, these Negro people, migrated north? You see Georgia, Armenia right there. You see Bulgaria right there. You don't think that they migrated to those areas and passed those areas? Hey, it's right there in front of you. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. So we're gonna do a quick skim session. I have this Perseus article up here regarding Flavius Josephus's Antiques of the Jews. You see what he says down here. He says that there were many sons born to Abraham by Keturah. Nay, he names three of them, Aphir and Sorim and Yaphram. That from Sorim was the land of Assyria denominated, and that from the other two, the country of Africa took his name. That's kind of shaky right there, so we can't really rely on that fully. But the main takeaway is that ancient cultures did indeed keep record of their lineage and bloodlines. So, I mean, you just have to verify. So let's go ahead and go into the next point. Here's a wiki article on Yakshan or Yakshan. It says that, okay, son of Keturah, okay, Yakshan had 5 brothers, Zimran, Medan. All right, yeah, we already got that. It says Josephus records that Abraham, all right, we got that. All right, Yakshan became father of Sheba and Dedan. We don't know what Sheba that is, the Arabic or the one that was on the continental Africa portion. Dedan had 3 sons named Ashurim, Letushim, and Leumim. So that brings us to the Ashurites wiki article. It says that the Ashurites are a group of people who, according to Genesis 25:3, descended from Dedan, the son of Yakshan, the son of Abraham. Their exact historical identity is unknown, but the name may refer to an Assyrian or Egyptian tribe, or it may be a generic term for peasants. Now, I can happily take a loss here regarding Syria and the origins of these people in exact detail. I don't know. We don't know. The sources don't tell. But we do know that melanated people were there. I mean, the skeletal remains are in that area. And the Negro in the New World, it tells that the Elamites, they put their genetic materials all around that area there. But specifically referring to the Syrian, I'll just say TBD, to be determined. But let's move on to something that I do know. All right, so this is my error, my fault here. I moved too fast and putting out number 1, but there's a lot of carryover and overlap in the region. So let's check out this Assyrian article, Wikipedia article. It says both Assyria and the contraction Syria are ultimately derived from the Akkadian Assur. Okay, following the decline of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the subsequent empires held dominion over the Assyrian lands, adopted distinct appellations for the region, with a significant portion of these names also being rooted in Assur. So let's go to the Akkadian portion. That's one thing I forgot too for part 1. It says the Akkadian Empire was the first known ancient empire of Mesopotamia, succeeding the long-lived civilization of Sumer. Centered on the city of Akkad and its surrounding region, the empire united Akkadian and Sumerian speakers under one rule and exercised significant influence across Mesopotamia, the Levant, and Anatolia. sending military expeditions as far south as Dilmun and Magan. Alright, so we're going to get into the Anatolian angle later on in another separate video presentation, but let's go ahead and close this video presentation out with a video clip.
We're standing in the Louvre looking at an enormous top of a column and capital formed of two bulls' heads. This is such a strange motif to me. It's so different than capitals we see in ancient Egyptian or ancient Greek art.
And we're in a period when ancient Greece was in fact beginning to produce its most famous architecture. This is about 500 BCE. We're in the area that is currently Iran.
This is the Achaemenid Empire, and they ruled over a vast area of the Mediterranean and the Near East.
They tried to rule over ancient Greece, but the Greeks would be successful, much to their surprise. And just from this bull capital, because of its massiveness and because you know that this is just one of dozens of such capitals, you get a sense of the scale of the royal architecture of this dynasty and the power of the Persians, and just how frightening that must have been to the ancient Greeks.
This capital was one of 36 that topped enormous columns in the audience hall, or Apadana.
So we're in the ancient city of Susa. This capital comes from one of two major palaces that were built by the Persian king Darius. Look at the size of those bulls. I wouldn't stand as tall even though it's crouching.
So imagine this in a hypostyled or columned hall, this dense forest of columns, and this is where the king would receive visitors. So this expression of power within an entire palace complex built of precious materials brought from all over Darius's empire. Seemed to be kneeling and yet towering above us. So I imagine anyone entering this hallway would have felt very small.
Which emphasizes that sense of scale.
And everything in this palace was meant to impress. Some of the glazed brickwork survives from the palace. There are images of griffins, of sphinxes, of guards.
The guards are interesting. They're holding spears and they've got bows wrapped over their shoulders. You can actually see their quivers just over their backs.
This accumulation of images of power as you made your way up to the audience hall through this field of columns.
By the time you got your audience with the king, you would have been most impressed, and the power that he wielded over so much of the Mediterranean, over so much of the Near East, was clear.
Very interesting video. Notice the imagery. I chopped it up that way for a reason. Notice also what they said about the empire and how expansive it was. You know, they got their materials from faraway areas, so they set up shop in faraway areas naturally. Links to everything will be in the description. That's the end of part 2. Part 3 will be next week. Guys, take care.